I'd like to bring this meeting to order. The Village of Villa Park Board of Trustees meeting, December 16th, 2024. Clerk Konecki, please call the roll.
Trustee Alfano.
Here.
Trustee Cordova.
Here.
Trustee Corkery. Trustee Kozar.
Here.
Trustee Kumar. Trustee Patrick.
Here.
President Kazone.
Here. And if you please stand for the pledge and then remain standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together this evening. May we have meaningful discussions that will help us to assist our village in these trying times. Help us to make the decisions that will affect the staff, directors, and residents of Villa Park. Guide us through the challenges we face, and may we approach each other with respect and kindness as one group. In your name, amen. Okay, item 3, amendments to the agenda. Do we have any proposed amendments? Okay, seeing none. Public comments on agenda items. Clerk Konecki, anyone signed up?
Yes, Christine Murphy. First one. I believe 12B.
Christine Murphy, 523 South Yale Avenue. I have two comments tonight. I believe the first one is on ordinance 12B, based on a recommendation from Suzanne. It falls somewhere between 12A and 12D and the levy information. First and foremost, I would like to thank the board, and I appreciate the thought process and the proposed intention of the trustees behind saving the residents money. However, the $50 or less, as stated by the trustees regarding annual savings per household, is nothing in comparison to the stated $300,000 impact negatively to our annual village budget. That being said, please pass the original ordinance that levies the maximum tax increase to the village. I am not in favor of holding the levy at last year's rate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My next comment is on Resolution D. I attended the village clerk's objection hearing and believe that the objector stated that there are several municipalities that appoint rather than elect their village or city clerks. I don't believe that to be true. Elmhurst and Lombard clerks are elected. My question to President Kazone is, do we have any additional data with specifics regarding other municipalities?
Yes, we do.
Can you share that with our residents?
It will be.
Perfect. As a registered voter, I don't appreciate your attempt to minimize or take away my voting privileges so that you can gain additional control over the board. I am against including this referendum question on this or any other election ballots. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rolf LeConte has a comment.
Good evening. My name is Rolf Laukent. I was here last week. There was some old guy there, a really bushy beard, and they left the mute button on. So our YouTube basically had none of my comments, and I wanted to make sure those comments, especially my positive comments, are still on the record. I'll be very brief, trust me, because I watched it for 2 minutes and 36 seconds, and it was like, God, that's horrible. So again, my name is Rolf Laukent. I'm here to present to you a proposal. I propose that the clerk position become an appointed staff position. Sorry about that. Currently, there is no one running on the ballot for the clerk position in the upcoming April 1st, 2025 election. Previously, for over 25 years, this position has been appointed and ran unopposed. The clerk position should not be a partisan or political position. Let's face it, it's a thankless job. The clerk must take minutes, attend all the meetings, file the appropriate documents, but has no say in discussion, decision-making, and lawmaking that you all do. And if that is not enough, they do it for very little pay. Merely a stipend. Most municipalities, and I will amend that because my discussion was with the Illinois Municipal League, and again, I apologize if I was completely incorrect, was that I called the Illinois Municipal League and they said a majority. And I called them when I heard that there was some complaints about that today, and they said, we'll get you the numbers. Now, Wisconsin, now Lombard and Elmhurst are not one of the, or are obviously two of the greater than 1,400 municipalities in Illinois. So we'll wait for your address on this. So therefore, sorry about that. So therefore, some municipalities have an appointed staff member set as a clerk. We are essentially deputized to perform the duties. We could do that here. We will join most other municipalities and eliminate some other municipalities and eliminate the need for someone to essentially volunteer for the position. In the upcoming April 1st, 2025 election, there is no one on the ballot for the clerk's position. I propose we put a referendum on the April 1st ballot, allowing our residents to decide if they want it. So their residents can decide if they want it or don't want it. Do you want to stay with the status quo, or do you want to change it? I request that you place this idea in the next meeting agenda, which is today, obviously. Allow our village attorney to review the elements of creating such a referendum and have discussion among the board of the subject. The deadline for the board to vote on such a referendum is January 16th. We should let our residents decide if Villa Park is best served by allowing an appointed staff member to handle the clerical duties, which they do most of anyways. Let our residents decide if Villa Park wants to join some others. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Thanks, Rolf.
Oh, I want to thank Hosanna for doing a fine job for 25 years.
Thank you.
Next is
Okay.
Cheryl Tucker. Item 13D and item 12. C, D, and E.
I'm actually here because I want clarification on several things, and so that's why I'm bringing it up. My understanding is from the attorney's message that you're going to have to vote on tonight, whether we're going to put the vote on the referendum. So I would like to have in your discussion time to make it real clear to the residents what it means to change from an elected official to an appointed official, so they can understand what it's coming up for the referendum, because a lot of cases it isn't made clear before the referendum what they're voting on. My other discussion is that I noticed in the budget for 25 that our expenditures for the budget and what he put in for the revenue, that the actual shortfall is somewhere around 13,100,008,512, which the difference of the tax levy is only 12,300,000. So where are we going to get the rest of the shortfall if we also cut out the tax levy? Because from what you put in, plus the fact you all are going to vote on tonight a couple issues, like replacing the ambulances on the budget, replacing a plow truck, which are all old in the system, and you're talking about doing a feasibility study, which is all going to cost the money, the village some money, but you're speaking of cutting what the income will be by taking the tax levy on. I'm a little concerned with those things. If you approve all those things in the budget tonight, how much of the shortfall will hit the people of the village? Like, will the trees get done? Will the streets get done? Because we all know that it takes 3 different engineering things to work to get a street proposed for 2006. If there's no money to do it in 2005, then all those streets that were supposed to be put in 2026 won't get done. I'm also concerned of all those people that have flooding issues. $26 or $50 being what they're going to get on the budget doesn't take care of their basements being flooded and them replacing their carpeting and their furniture and all the belongings on the bottom of the basement when their sewer systems aren't going to get done because they get rolled because there's no money to do it. Those are my issues, and I also want to understand you're doing a vote on an abatement, and my understanding is the abatement means that we didn't need those taxes. where are those taxes going? Did we actually not charge our property taxes, those for those following things that you're abating? How does that work?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
No one else.
Okay, anyone else comments on agenda items? Okay, item 5, public comments on non-agenda items?
No one's.
Anyone for non-agenda items? Okay, we have no proclamations, so we will go to item 7 is a presentation by S.B. Friedman, Jeffrey Dickinson on the bond issue? Yeah, bond issue for the union.
So, yes, we have Jeffrey Dickinson here from SB Friedman. We have hired him to do an analysis of the proposed general obligation alternative revenue source bonds for the Union project. He will lead a discussion, first make a presentation, and then be available for discussion about the necessity for the village's participation. One of the things that the proponents from Marquette did was an analysis that told them that they were not going to have enough money, they couldn't raise enough capital for the return on investment to cover it with just investor money, that they needed bonds to cover the difference. They looked at TIF bonds, they looked at GO bonds, and GO bonds have to be backed by the city. They have lower interest rates for a couple different reasons. And since Jeff's a lot smarter about this stuff than I am, I'm going to stop talking and let him explain where we are. Jeff is our hired expert to do our own analysis that we paid for. So this is if the numbers don't prove out that we need to do the GO bonds, his analysis would show that. So that there's not just somebody trying to sell us a story, but the Marquette Group is a very reputable firm. We just need to do our own due diligence as required by law. And so without further ado, Jeffrey Dickinson from SB Friedman.
Thank you. Good evening. That was a pretty good description of who I am and what I'm up to. We're your consultant, SB Friedman Development Advisors, and we're reviewing the request for assistance from the union developer to evaluate its necessity. I guess that's the purpose of the presentation this evening. We have had a two-part role working on your behalf. Part of it is this work that I'm going to talk about today. Does the project need the help? The other part of our role is does the project generate enough taxes to fund the help if it is needed? So that's also work that we've done. So that's sort of bullet one here. But bullet two is we call it a review of their gap analysis. As Matt said, the developer prepares a pro forma, a financial model, and we essentially test the assumptions that drive the results and make sure that we're comfortable that their assumptions are reasonable and that the gap is real. I think you're all well familiar with the particulars of the site and the project. It has evolved slightly as development projects do in terms of unit count and mix and parking spaces. But I don't remember the last time this group, the developer's been in front of you, but it is the same project. It's a mixed-use building. It's got retail, a little bit of retail space, about 238 apartment units, and then there's a bunch of parking, some of which the village is going to end up owning. Those are the major elements of it. The request is for $13 million of assistance, more or less as upfront capital. This would be in the construction period, and that is an early point in time for public participation. But as I walk through this, ultimately, I guess I'll give away the solution. We believe that the returns are, the assistance is necessary to achieve market returns. So that's the conclusion. But I'll show some of the work here to you all. This is, again, it's just a breakdown of the program. There's been a little bit of movement on the unit mix, which is relevant. There's 5 3-bedrooms, 72s, and then the small units. Retail square footage, I don't think has changed the whole time we've been looking at this. And then there's a mix of parking spaces to be owned by the developer and parking spaces to be owned by the village. So the village is going to essentially own a condominium inside of this private building worth of parking spaces. And so there'll be publicly owned parking. And I guess, again, conceptually, I don't know that this is on many of my slides, that's driving a significant portion of the gap. 94 parking spaces for the village to have those and own those to benefit the neighborhood costs money, and the developer doesn't make any money for those. Those are those are essentially a public improvement. So a portion of this gap is driven by that specific fact, the 94 village-owned spaces. The total project costs about $86 million. We do walk through this. We did receive information from the developer. As I said, we tested those assumptions based on our own research, but they put forth what they believe to be reasonable assumptions to drive the economics of their project. This is another way of thinking about the project. It's the gross versus rentable square footage. So there's about 50,000 square. You build the gross, you rent. Or I'm sorry, yeah, you build the gross, you rent the net. That's part of the equation. So there's only revenue coming from, but this is normal for any private project. These are just the details of this particular one. This is the project budget as provided by the developer. We did look at the inputs here and evaluate those. I'll talk about those in a second. There is another limitation on the way TIF funds can be used, since this would be a TIF-supported project. You can't pay for the vertical construction portion of the building except for the publicly owned parking garage. So we've been working with the village attorney's office and the developer to identify adequate numbers of TIF-eligible costs. So, there's the question of, will there be the increment? There's the question of, do they need the increment? And then there's the question of, do they have adequate eligible costs to allow us to give them the increment? So it's essentially a three-part equation to make TIF work. And we did, as I say, evaluate their budget and essentially fact-check the key inputs. Revenue is a big, obviously, part of returns. How much rent are they going to get from the units that they're building, the apartment units in particular? We looked at comparable newer apartment projects in York Township, in Elmhurst, in Lombard, other places. The short of it is, the rents that they have performed, that they project, are in the range of reasonable. So again, this is one of our checks. If the rents are low, that would be a way to show a bigger gap, and that would raise a red flag. But these rents appear reasonable, and therefore we feel reasonably comfortable with the revenue assumptions on the apartment side, and that's by far the lion's share of the revenue in their pro forma. They do have a rent number for the retail space, also reasonable, not nearly as big in terms of total revenue, but we did check that as well. They've assumed rental income from the parking spaces that they control. Those are reasonable. They've assumed their revenues escalate annually. Again, these are things developers can do to make their returns look worse than they are. These assumptions are reasonable. 3% escalation is pretty reasonable. They escalated their operating expenses as well. Another place games can be played perhaps, but that did not happen here either. They can inflate the vacancy. We can't lease the place up. That makes the revenues go down. They did not do that. They have a reasonable vacancy assumption. That's kind of a market normal 5%, sort of frictional vacancy. You have to periodically, people move. It takes a minute to release a unit. And we looked at their operating expenses, which is the other side of it. You get the rent, that's the revenue, but it does cost money to run an apartment building. They essentially benchmarked it in aggregate. We disaggregated that and again concluded their tax projections are reasonable and their other OpEx assumptions are reasonable. So I guess I'm going through these steps just to give you a sense of, we unpacked the details of the pro forma and benchmarked those inputs that we can to make sure we were comfortable with essentially the net revenue off the building annually. We looked at their timeline, and that is relevant. They do intend to sell the building, at least according to this model, in 2028. So there is a reversion, that's the term. There's a projected sale, and the cap rate of that sale, they make an assumption about that. We check that against benchmarks. That is reasonable. Their assumptions about cost of sale are reasonable. The exit, essentially $90 million sale, reasonable. So again, we didn't find anything, I guess, is the point. But we looked at a lot of the important variables that drive returns, and returns are what capital needs. They need adequate returns for investors and lenders to put their money into the project. So ultimately, we did not look at leverage returns. That's the returns on the investment side. We looked at unleveraged IRR. That's the cash flow absent financing, and then we looked at yield on cost. We have benchmarks for both of those return metrics, and again, they got inside of our metrics. So we believe their returns are reasonable. We do believe the $13 million is necessary, essentially, to have a financeable project. As I mentioned, I don't know that we put our finger on precisely what percentage of that 13 is the publicly owned parking spaces, but it's a material portion of that, and that's just a cost without a revenue from the point of view of the developer. So those just straight up have to be funded by the village because they don't have any. They're just costs. So that's the summary. I'm happy to field questions if folks have them.
Trustee
I don't know
Kumar.
what culture, do I kind of respond, or do I go through the mayor? I
Yeah, go
apologize.
ahead, Trustee Kumar.
Yeah. I heard, like, for each parking space, the average is about $30,000 per parking space, which puts us at about, I think, 2.5 million, almost 3 million of this, and the other 10 million is not parking spaces. So I want to clarify that this is considerably not parking space. It is a considerable amount non-parking space. Not that I'm against the project going forth. I just like to be clear to the people of Villa Park that we're not paying $13 million for parking spaces. It's probably closer to 3 million for the parking spaces we will own, if that much, and the 10 million is to make this project go through, and it is positive in other ways for us, other than just the parking spaces. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes.
Yes.
Just to go with that, we're not, the money that is raised in the TIF is the increment off of the taxes, the new taxes for the new building. Those are property taxes dedicated towards this project. So the village isn't actually paying directly for the parking spaces. Just want to make sure that's
No,
clear.
that
know-
I
yeah,
understand.
yeah.
It's just,
I
we're.
know you do. I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
we're proposing that this, a considerable amount of this
Mm-hmm.
money that we're doing is for parking spaces, but it's only it's not as considerable as you want. I want to state the facts. It's
Right.
3 million possibly out of the 13 million that is being leveraged in this project.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move on to item 9, consent agenda. The bill listing from the week of December 9th, 2024, in the amount of $3,394,233.85. Approval of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on December 9th, 2024. Approval of the minutes of the public notice meeting held on December 9th, 2024. And approval of the minutes of the Village Board of Trustees meeting held on December 9th, 2024. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda? Trustee Kumar? We have a second? Trustee Corkery? Okay, questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Clerk Kornecki, please.
Okay, Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
President Casal?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to item 12A, is an ordinance of the Village of Villa Park granting a variation from the front yard setback requirements for the property commonly known as 340 South Wisconsin Avenue, Villa Park, Illinois. Manager Harlan.
Just 1 second, I have they wrong. Yes. This ordinance approves petition PZ 2422 for a variation to allow a deck within a front yard setback located at 340 South Wisconsin Avenue as per Exhibits A and B. Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval 7-0. I don't know, is the proponent here? We've been able to move this along with the help of the community, well, Mark McLaughlin and his staff in Community Economic Development has managed to make this possible for him to be able to work on this over the Christmas holiday, so, anyway, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say, but we're ready to move forward, and staff recommends, Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously approved it, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for the ordinance?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Cordova, do we have a second? Trustee Kumar? I was at Planning and Zoning meeting, and this passed through pretty quickly. This is basically a replacement of the existing deck, so it's not adding a new one, well, adding a new one, but it's the same size as was there originally, which now does not meet the setback, so but it passed pretty quickly. Okay, any questions, comments? Trustee Cordova?
I'm always up for people bettering their homes and whatnot, especially a deck or whatnot. So we get these a fair amount, which I can ask a question offline, but yeah.
Yeah.
saw the drawings. I actually did the same thing, go to Menards, do the thing, bring it to these guys and get the stamps and then go do it. So, yeah, good luck.
Yeah. And planning and zoning and or community development have been discussing so that to changing our ordinances a little bit so that these things can be done just as a matter of staff and instead of coming to the board each time. So that eventually will be sent to the board.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Trustee Kumar.
I'm definitely in favor of improving the process so it is more efficient and more comfortable for the people of Villa Park. These kind of things have always been a little bit of a pet peeve of a lot of our residents, and I think it's something we need to address quicker than later.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Trustee Kozar.
This was done under our new system where we didn't need a court reporter, is that right?
Correct.
And it was kind of quicker?
14 minutes.
Well, right. But the process was a little bit quicker for them. Good, because that's what we've all been working towards here is simple variances such as yours shouldn't take 6 months to do and shouldn't cost you a couple thousand just to ask for permission. So I'm glad that it didn't. Thanks for going through that.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Clerk Reneke, please.
Trustee Corkery,
Yes.
Trustee Kozar,
Yes.
Trustee Cordova,
Yes.
Trustee Alfano,
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Item 12B is an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, commencing on the first day of January 2024, ending on the 31st day of December 2024, collectible in the year 2025. Manager Harline.
This ordinance sets the rate for property taxes levied for the property value assessed as of January 31, 2024, and collectible in calendar year 2025. Staff has included a version of the ordinance prepared for adoption with a full PTEL increase and a version that keeps the total tax levy at the amount collected in the current year. The staff is able to support either option. However, of course, if the one without the increase is kept, we either need to know whether we were going to reduce the fund balance or if we have cuts that can be made during the discussion about the budget.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Trustee Patrick.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, we have a second. Trustee Kumar. Any questions or comments? Trustee Patrick.
I do, thank you. So over the last few weeks, we've had a lot of discussion about this topic in particular. And I think our recent discussions have highlighted a lot of our village's challenges and opportunities. And while I do believe that freezing our taxes might have some benefits, I also see some of the challenges highlighted by our staff and other board members with that. I think it's important, especially with budgeting coming up for next year and moving forward in the future, that we are actively trying to find ways to give back to our residents whenever we can. Moving forward, I think it's very important to continue to have these discussions and collaborate collectively for the benefit of our residents. I think at the end of the day, though, however, I think it's important that we, as a board, collectively pass this ordinance as is. So that way, we can start off the new year strong on a good budget. But I ask that the board, that moving forward, that we always put our residents first, think about the best ways in which we can help give back to them. And I know that we've had discussions before in the past about finding alternate ways of possibly reducing taxes in other areas. And I think that's very important for us to keep in mind. So my request, just moving forward, is keep that in mind. Ask these questions. Let's discuss these things. Let's collaborate and find ways that might be better for our residents. So as a whole, right now, I'm in favor of approving this as is.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Trustee Kozar.
As you all know, I've been a proponent for not raising our tax levy. I think that our people, our citizens, we get charged income tax, we get charged sales tax, we get charged property tax. We're talking right now about a GEO bond, so the village is on the hook for $13 million as we release a bond. And all I'm trying to do here is, there's a lot of things we can't control. Obviously, we don't control income tax, that's federal or state, but we can control our property taxes. So for the last 3 years, I've been a proponent of trying to not reduce our property taxes, but at least keep what we can control the same. And every little bit helps in these times of inflation, rising costs, rising house prices, which ultimately increase your property taxes. So that's why I've been in favor of trying to utilize what we do have and not think that we lose money by not raising a tax levy, because it's not our money, it's our people's money. So we can't lose whatever we don't have. We're asking our residents and our people for more money every year, more money. So I understand what you're saying, Kevin, in terms of, we should, best that we can, try to be united if we're gonna pass a levy or not pass a levy for that matter, or we're gonna pass the budget. And it is important that we continue to have these discussions and see where we can save our residents money. I will always try to keep taxes of any sort down so that our people aren't, that our government is not constantly in the pockets of our people. And we have to be cognizant of that. And without this discussion about the tax levy, I think a lot of the thoughts and challenges and ideas that we've had wouldn't have surfaced, and we wouldn't have talked about them but for our debate on this tax levy. So, I'll vote in line with you, Kevin, and approving this levy. It puts a bad taste in my mouth. I don't want to do it. I don't want to take more money from our people, but I recognize that the votes just aren't here on the board. We pass the levy, we don't pass the levy, but I think in this case, the levy's going to pass, if we all like it or not. But that's kind of where we're at. So we will look for other ways to save our people money and try to keep government out of our pockets.
Trustee Kumar.
Yeah, along these lines, as I said, I already had made points about inflationary and how this is the levy itself is kind of a mechanism of addressing inflation in our economy, and I don't feel that we need to kind of mess with that situation. However, I am not in disagreement that the people of Villa Park have considerably difficult budgets to adjust, and everything is costly, and that we need to keep our expenses down as much as possible. I know our staff at present is working towards that. I think some things that we can do are at what we've already been discussing even today, improve the permitting process. That is somewhere that costs affect us on a daily basis, improving the turnaround time, the difficulty with which people get permits for things like heating, cooling, and things that are daily necessities. I think we've done a considerable job doing that. Looking at our budget, line items a little bit more deeply to allocate for things initially rather than later. And as we go to a new system, I know Chuck has talked about we're going to a new system for our accounting. That's going to become a lot easier for us to get the data, kind of look at where we're going. I think in the last meeting, Kevin talked about something that came out of a system of reporting that told us that what we want is kind of the people of Villa Park are complaining about trees and cutting trees. So there's a lot of things that come out of that data that make us more efficient. And I think that efficiency is going to lead to cost savings for all of us in the long run. So I hope also with our contracting in the future, and this has been a sort of a thing I've been discussing, that we hold people to their contracts as much as possible. Those are who we give the contracts to. We've had a lot of luck. I know Public Works has often come to us with actually contracts that they allocated more and they came back with, they didn't spend as much. And so for that, I thank them for oftentimes being that diligent. And I hope that all our groups do the same, be diligent with your spending so that we can keep to our budget and do more for our people with the budget we have. Our budget is not as large as a lot of cities. We don't have the same tax revenue. We are not home rule. We have a lot of things working against us, but we're trying very hard to give as much back to the people of Villa Park as possible, given that situation. And I hope that we look at the numbers carefully to continue to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Cordova?
So I have been, and I am in favor of taking the full levy as a necessary step to ensure the sustainability, long-term growth of Villa Park. This decision allows us to maintain financial stability, protect critical services, and continue to responsibly manage our debt obligations through abatements. For example, abatements today that we're going to be talking about, like the 2017, 2018 A series, demonstrates how leveraging alternative revenues, such as sales tax and stormwater fees, can reduce the tax burden on residents. Taking a full levy now, it's an increase about $31, $39. We still don't know what that number is. It'll ensure that we can hold these practices while preparing for future uncertainties. This here is about financial responsibility and being good stewards to the residents of Villa Park. We know that compound interest works in our favor when we plan ahead and take incremental steps like this. Small, consistent decision-making today prevents large, more divisive, disruptive impacts in the future. Looking ahead, and I know we're just talking about this now, but looking ahead, we also have to carefully consider the grocery tax that once it becomes a local decision in 2026. So January 1st, 2026, that grocery tax can be knocking on that door. So with that expiration of the state mandated grocery tax, it will be up to us up here to decide whether implementing a municipal grocery tax is going to be necessary to diversify our revenue sources and our revenue streams to reduce over-reliance on property tax. So these decisions here, they have to work together to create a balanced approach to funding this and to the funding that supports Villa Park's continued growth, but then also ensures fairness for our residents. So as much as that 30-something dollars, whatever it would be, there is compound interest that in 20 years, that turns into multiple millions of dollars for our residents. So again, I am in favor and I have been in favor of taking this full tax levy.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? I just like to reiterate what the board has said. I work with staff a lot, and I see what staff does to try to keep our costs down. They do a good job at that. And I appreciate what Trustee Kozar is looking at, is trying to give a little break to the residents. But in a case like this, I think it is, at least this year, coming up for next year's tax levy, it is something that I think we need just to keep going for another year, and then possibly look at some cutbacks for the upcoming year as things go. Okay. Any other questions, sorry. Clerk Renecke, please.
Okay, Trustee Cordova?
Actually, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. I just wanted to say that our ordinance does state that the total amount of appropriations for all corporate purposes legally made to be collected from the tax levy of the current fiscal year is hereby ascertained to be the sum of $12,385,709. That is what our proposed tax levy will be for this coming year. Thank you. Okay, now, Clerk Renecke.
Okay, Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
Trustee Corkery?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
President Casella?
Yes. Okay, item 12C is an ordinance abating the tax hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and interest on $3,010,000 general obligation alternate bonds, sales tax alternate revenue source, Series 2017 of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois. Manager Hartline.
Thank you. I grabbed the wrong one. As part of the annual tax property property tax process, the village routinely abates property tax levy for debt service when it has certain funds available to pay the debt. Abating the property tax means we are informing the county that we do not need property tax revenues to pay the debt service on these bonds. These particular bonds are issued as part of our plan to manage the TIF 3 general obligation bond debt, which is insufficient, which at the time had insufficient revenue to cover the increasing debt service payments. All three of the next three ordinances are abatements where we have other sources so that we do not have to raise property taxes. We are allowed to raise property taxes to cover any debt so that the village does not default on debt. In these cases, we have found alternate revenue sources, so we do not need to increase property taxes, as Trustee Cordova was alluding to.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion for the ordinance. Trustee Cordova?
I'll make that motion.
We have a second. Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Clerk Renecki, please.
Trustee Alfano.
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Corkery. Yes. Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Item 12D is an ordinance abating the tax hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and interest on $2,645,000 general obligation alternate bonds, sales tax alternate revenue source, Series 2018A of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois. Manager Harline.
Again, as part of the annual property tax process, the village routinely abates property tax levy for debt service when there's certain funds available to pay the debt. The enclosed ordinance abates the property tax levy for the 2018A stormwater alternate revenue bonds as there is sufficient revenue collected to pay for the debt on these bonds.
Okay, thank you. You have a motion for the ordinance. Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
You have a second? Trustee Kumar? Any questions or comments? Clerk Renecki.
Trustee Corkery.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Alfano.
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Item 12E is an ordinance abating the tax hereto levied for the year 2024 to pay the principal of and interest on $2,735,000 general obligation alternate bonds, sales tax alternate revenue source, Series 2019A of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois. Manager Harline.
Again, part of the annual property tax process. The enclosed ordinances abate the property tax for the 2019A stormwater alternative revenue bonds as there is sufficient revenue collected to pay for the debt on these bonds.
Okay, thank you. You have a motion for the ordinance? Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
Second. Trustee Kumar? Any questions or comments? Trustee Kumar?
I'm just happy to say we're going through the process of abating so many of these bonds because we have had the forethought to, as a village, to collect and address these issues through our budget in the past, and that continues in this process. And so that's where the abatements are coming from. So that is showing forethought and considerable financial smartness. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Clerk Renecki, please.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Corkery.
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Alfano.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Item 12F is an ordinance accepting the 2025 budget for the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, for all corporate purposes in lieu of annual appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2025, and ending December 31st, 2025.
The ordinance adopts the official budget for the Village of Villa Park for the year beginning January 1, 2025 and ending December 31, 2025. The budget was prepared for discussion on the November 25th and again on December 9th of 2024. Although technically not a codified ordinance, it has been our custom to give the budget multiple readings. The budget is balanced and ready for adoption. Staff recommends adoption of the budget. I understand there are some proposed amendments coming forward, and I believe the staff is prepared to give you a final number. The village board, actually, the Board of Trustees actually passes an ordinance that sets the amount of expenditure, and then also we have an an attachment that shows the revenues for each fund. We don't actually adopt the budget book that's put together by staff, but so the numbers we only need tonight are to alter the total amount for the that's in the ordinance. If there are offsetting revenues, offsetting expenditures, we can adopt both of those. But I don't, the amounts, as far as I know, are small enough that we probably don't need to make an offsetting revenue adjustment and considering the entire budget. Now, one of the things I want to address, one of the speakers came up and said that we have a budget shortfall. We do not have a budget shortfall. We have an intended spend down of some revenues. For example, in there is in the street improvement fund, we have a large number of dollars left from the original referendum bond issuance. So we planned this year to spend more than we raised, and next year we plan to spend an excess of $7,400,000 more than we will raise in sales tax this year. That's because we already have funds built up in reserve, so we can address several street projects. It's not clear, it's not known for certain that we'll get all those projects done, but if we do, the fund balance will drop from just under $10,600,000 to $3,100,000. So there's no shortfall. There is just an intentional spend down of resources to achieve the plan. In the general fund, we're showing right now a fund balance projected at the end of the year of somewhere around 196 days. The fund balance in the general fund is it's good to have one, but it's also it's important not to build up an excess fund balance, because then we're just storing the people's money rather than putting it to use. So the intention is to be close to 120 days at the end of the year, and we're projecting a fund balance available of about 127 days at the end of the 2025. And then part of that is what side of December 31st will some of the expenditures land for the rec center. So this might have, we might have spent more on the rec center by December 31, 2024 than we have, expected to, and in which case the fund balance will be slightly less at the end of the year. But the goal is to end up with that revenue at about 120 days, and that's what we're estimating. So yes, we are expending more money than we are taking in. We also plan to do that last year, and we don't always spend everything. We don't always get all the street projects done, but there is no shortfall in the budget, just to make that clear.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the ordinance? Trustee Patrick?
Make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Trustee Cordova?
Yep.
Okay, questions or comments? Trustee Patrick?
Thank you. I will be making a couple of requests for amendments to the budget, but before I do so, first of all, I want to thank staff for being able to answer my questions and meet with me over the last week, so that way we could kind of figure out a plan moving forward and how we can address some of the questions that I had moving forward. And a little bit of the background about these requests is that the My Villa Park app was released on October 1st. That app is very handy. Have it on a smartphone. It allows you to reach the village and submit requests, complaints, or what have you. It is a very accessible option, so that way you don't have to come in, you don't have to go online, you could do it right from your phone. If you don't have that app already, I highly recommend that you check it out and download it to your phone, so that way you can see for yourself. With that app, in the first month that this app was out to the public, there was a total of 777 requests in 1 month. When you break that down, 391 of those requests, which is 51% of all the topics, had something related to do with trees, tree trimming, tree removal, and things like that. And when you look at the numbers and the data that was provided to us, the very next topic only had 36 complaints compared to the 391. That gap tells me that our residents are concerned about this issue. And then the next would be 35 complaints regarding street repairs and 35 regarding neighbor complaints. All three of those is 15% of that total. But again, 51% of all the topics covered had to do with trees. So this is what I was referring to when I was talking earlier about how we as board members need to find ways on how we give back to the public, and not just give back, but have feedback and ways in which we could understand where the needs of our community is and have our pulse on that community. And to me, this was an issue. When I am out talking with residents, one of the most major complaints I have is our trees. The planting. And I know that we have a public works crew that does our streets, the parkway trees. And at the last meeting, I also talked about Brian Roche, who also is in charge of our parks. And it really did enlighten me as to, listen, we need help in this department, okay? We do. Our staff is actually, they've got a lot of other projects, especially this last year, that they've been working on. So with that being said, I felt that there was a need to do something regarding how the village approaches what the data is showing us, what our residents want. And we need to take care of our trees. This is something that is important to everybody. Last year, the village planted a total of 60 parkway trees. One of the things that I'd like to know from the village is, like, do we have a count of how many we cut down in the last year? I know that we've had a lot of I don't need that answer now, but I know that we've had a lot of projects that went underway. Recently, at the last coffee with the board, it was brought to my attention that one of the most recent trees that was cut down was 97 years old. And they identified that tree because of the Fund Commission having the oldest tree contest in Villa Park. So here we are, I believe, cutting down more trees than we are able to plant, which is a problem. And not only that, but our residents are showing this as well. I want to make a couple amendments, and I hope that the rest of the board will also look at this data and look at what I see and also what the residents are asking for. There are two amendments that I want to make to the budget. The first one is I would like to amend the budget for $80,000 to Fund 60 for the Street Improvement Fund to be allocated.
What was that again?
$80,000, Fund 60, the Street Improvement Fund, to be allocated towards a public works laborer. The second amendment would be for $100,000 for our Street Forestry Fund, which is 10, TAC 525, TAC 28, TAC 401, for contractual tree planting services. The goal here is, I believe that we have the ability to at least double the amount of trees that we've planted from the previous year. Now, we don't have to continue with that on an annual basis, but I do believe that we owe it to our residents to catch up from at least all the trees that we've cut down. One of the things that I'm excited about in my conversations with staff was talking about a couple of things. Is first of all, we do not have a certified arborist on staff. We don't. And what we are talking about, and later on in the agenda, I hope that the board agrees to approve the ASME contract that we're talking about, because specifically within some of the contract, there's verbiage that allows the village to incentivize by paying one of these public work laborers to incentivize them to become a certified arborist. And I believe that if we, and in my conversations, if we can add one more public work laborer, that we would have a full-time dedicated crew, dedicated just to the trees and the parkway trees and the trimming and maintenance of those. So I believe it's important because that contract allows us to have an arborist. It allows us to start to actively take care of our parkway trees. Now, also, the 100,000 for the contractual tree planting is that I know that with even 3 Public Works employees and an arborist on staff, that's still a lot of trees. It's a tall order. But that's why we would contract it out. I believe this is important. I believe it's important to our residents. So I would like to see those 2 amendments to the budget, and I would hope that the board could also see it that way. That's all I have.
Yeah, if you could put up the tab that's budget expense levy yes. Okay. So if I could, if I could interrupt for just a second, the funding for the position comes out of street improvements, but the actual benefits, et cetera, comes out of the corporate fund. So the actual, to cover those 2 things, there's $18,500 approximately that will come out of corporate and $68,100 that would come out of street improvements. So the appropriate amendments would be as shown on the computer up there. So we just worked that out this afternoon. Sorry I didn't get that back to you sooner, sir. But that would accomplish what you wanted to do, and this was originally actually proposed by the by Public Works and was in the original draft budget, and I cut it because my concern is that eventually we'd like to move more of that to corporate fund, but this is addressing a need, and that's what this debate is supposed to be about, and I appreciate you coming to staff and giving us time to prepare so we can have it ready for the meeting.
Yeah, I do think it is important, especially when we are offering our residents a tool that allows things to make things easier. And that's a common thing that we've been talking about up here a lot, is how do we make processes easier for our residents? And when the data comes back and there is a clear need there, I think we have to have those discussions that I talked about earlier regarding the tax levy. Those conversations are so important because we get to the bottom of these things and we can actually give back to our residents. So that's all I'm hoping to do today.
Okay, Trustee Patrick, so, okay, the laborer is one thing. The $100,000 for contractual tree planting, where did you request those funds coming from?
The Street Forestry Fund, it is 10.525.28.401. I think I did that right.
Yeah, it would just be the general fund. So I think in total it'd be 118,500 from the general fund, and then 68,100 from Fund 60, as we worked it out. Yeah.
What she said.
Okay.
And that, actually, somehow I have the numbers on the right column are not. I'm going to send Suzanne an updated version which has the right numbers. So.
Trustee Kumar.
I'm definitely in favor of this particular.
Actually, we've got a motion to amend, or,
Oh, it was
Yeah,
seconded.
let me get the
I'm sorry?
right number to you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it was not
apologize.
seconded yet.
Oh,
Okay.
I will
Would you like to second it? Okay.
I will second it, then I will count.
Okay, then you can discuss it.
Okay, discussion, I am in favor of this particular process and adding this particular individual. I suggest we think long-term also, that the addition of the employment is a long-term, and that the 100,000 is a short-term where we revisit depending on our needs, and doesn't carry forward necessarily. So that 100,000 is for 1 year. Once we figure out if we're meeting our goals, if we need to continue anyway, it's contractual, it's an easy remove or add to the budget depending on yearly situation with the trees. So I am in favor of this particular proposal for sure. It seems like that's what the people of Villa Park need the most at this present time. That being said, you know, I would like to have the line items. I want to be discussed over time, the expenditures on the line items over the next year. It would be nice to get some updates on how far we've gotten on some of these projects that we've proposed. One is the tree. Another line item once we get to the new software that I'm gonna propose that we add to the budget at large is a line item with expenditure for maintenance of the community center, which is something that's coming up, which is a real concern. And we need kind of updates, because in order to propose our new budget for the next year, in 2025, that kind of update is going to be necessary. So certain line items, having a good report on that will allow the present board and the board that comes in the next board to actually address these concerns in the budget. So those two things I think are important. I also have been pooling for the pool as being a line item as well, that we address the funds towards the new pool that we will eventually need, whether it be now, in a couple of years or 10 years hence, that liner isn't going to last forever. So that being said, all of that deserves a kind of a consideration in the budget. That doesn't mean we're going to spend it all now. We need to know where we're at on all those projects.
Okay.
So that's my main concerns with the budget.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the amendment. Trustee Cordova?
Yeah, I know that trustee Patrick brought this up last week, so I started looking at the same data sheet that we had. And the 770, from my understanding, is that it was for the whole year, correct? The 770 calls or?
1 month. You want to see the sheet?
It only started in October.
There you go.
It's only for 3 months.
Manager, I probably add it. I believe it's from probably around the timeframe of when it was initiated, which is, I think,
1 month.
May to
1
now.
month.
No, this.
Oh, that's 1
yeah.
month? Okay. I wasn't quite sure what you got, but
Yeah, because this thing that we had, it was a 1-year analysis of open request, right? From January 24 all the way to December 24. And there's requests throughout the whole thing. So
When was the app launched?
do we, I want to say it was like April or May that app was launched officially to the public.
So the original, the GoGov went live, I think, in April. I think we didn't have the app actually launched until after July, in July. And so so if you go onto the web or if you make a phone call, we'll put it into the same system. But the app is one of the ways that a lot of people use to get their concerns in there. Actually, right now, we're getting more phone calls still, so the efforts that Trustee Patrick and others to get people using the app more is very useful. It's a lot more efficient for staff. But yes, we've had that available. But there are some numbers that were, I looked at different time periods, and there was a one segment that was just October to the end of the year. But tree in every segment, tree calls have been a very high number, about 50.
Right, so, yeah, that's what I'm getting to. I just want to ensure that if we're, and I'm not against, adding or moving budgets around. I just want to ensure that the data is presented correctly. So of the 4 buckets that it seems as though trees are in there, there's 5 of them. The top 4, the top one is tree limb pickup in parks. Then it goes to tree trimming, which is 114, which is 14% of the total number of calls.
Are you looking at the right data?
This is what we have, yeah. 1-year analysis, GoGov, MVP, read only.
I have it highlighted here if you want to look at
Yeah,
it.
well, I have it right here, I believe,
Okay.
too. Yeah, these are the right numbers. We have the same numbers. 60 of those, do you see how the 60 is for tree limb pickup in Parkway? And then there's tree removal. 40 people have sent in requests for tree removals. There's nothing in here that says that people are calling and asking for more trees. Is that correct in this? Or did it get bucketed into something else?
Correct. I don't believe there's an actual request in GoGov. I'll have to go back and review all of our requests that are put in. But typically, yes, most of the GoGov calls have been more geared towards tree limb pickups from tree limbs falling after storm events or through our winds. Typically, I would say most of our tree limb pickup is also associated with a trim. Like, it depends on how our assistant puts it in. Usually, limb pickups are generated just because we want to go pick them up, but they do usually request a trim to look at the tree. We don't have necessarily, I think, a form for tree requests. That is something we are working on to launch as part of this in January. Would be an actual request. If you would like to have a tree planted in your parkway, especially if this budget amendment is approved, then obviously we need a lot of locations. We'd much rather go in locations people would like a tree.
Right.
So we are creating a nomination form so that we can better track locations that people request. I do quantify that not every location will be accepted based on, it has to be qualified. Obviously, we don't plan in narrow parkways in front of stop signs, some of those locations. But if the locations qualify, we'll then generate listing locations for future plantings, and then we'll probably work off that list for plantings into this next year and the future years as well, as we receive them, so we can track locations that trees are requested. Additionally, we do have Adopt a Tree. We've got about 15 the last couple years, and that would be incorporated into that. And what that would probably entail is if you want to pick the species of tree that you want planted in your parkway, then it would fall under Adopt a Tree, where there's an associated fee with the purchase of the actual tree material, the tree itself.
Got it. So I guess my biggest takeaway or my biggest piece here is the analysis and data shows us that this is more about tree pickup, removal, and trimming as opposed to planting. So yes, if we're able to make it work, then great. I would like to see what we're taking away from. But in the data, it doesn't show anything that people are asking for, additional trees. They're asking for more services to parks, parkway, removal, and trimming.
Yeah, and I would say, I believe to talk to trustee, he had asked, the numbers are about 120 to 150 trees a year are what has been removed since I've been here. I don't have the actual number this year. I think this year's a little bit higher. We had a little bit of the storm damage, so we removed trees that were damaged in the storm. And so the push from the ECC and a few other commissions have been more of a one-to-one. I think that's where the doubling the number to about 150 comes from, is to try to replace on a one-to-one basis.
And yeah, sorry. And then my last
sorry.
question on this: how much does it cost, just resource management, to put a tree in, even if it's a little sapling, whatever it would be?
So the 60 trees that were referenced, that's what was put in by our crews just in Public Works. I know Parks plants a few trees as well with their crew members. And it's about $300 to $350 a tree just for the purchase of the tree. We anticipate that doubling for the cost of labor to contract that out. So in that 100,000, we anticipate there'll be about 150 trees at about $700 a tree. And that's kind of in line with what we see in our contracts. So with our Public Works contracts, we started moving the last year or two that when we remove trees, we included in the contract to replace those trees and then try to do some infill. So we planted a little bit more than 60 overall last year, but that's where we're at. And we've seen those prices be about $1,000 a tree. I anticipate if we go out for 150 trees, that number drops slightly due to quantity, right? So they're mobile, they're bringing in trucks. That labor now has decreased because the volume has increased.
Right, economies of scale, the whole thing. Right.
So, but the general rule of thumb that we've gone by is about double the cost. And so the trees cost somewhere between about $275, $350 is what we try to keep the price range in the last year. They've gone up a little bit over the last couple of years. But a general rule of thumb is then you double that for the labor for a contractor to install.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Mike, what size trees do you guys usually shop for?
We typically go for the 1.5 to 2 inch caliber trees, so they're a little bit more mature, they're a little more stable. We will still lose a tree or a couple trees that won't make it from the planting, but yeah, we go for the actual trees that are a little bit more mature and young. I would say mature, but not being saplings, not the little twigs that they planted, but an actual tree that has a stalk and then branches and leaves.
Okay, thanks. Trustee Kumar.
I think from an environmental perspective, and it's forethought to actually contract these trees at once in a year, kind of cut the cost overall for planting, because you can get them at a cheaper price per tree rather than, again, spread it over many years and then spend more and more on each tree. It may be a good idea. As I said, whatever this is, the 100,000, we'll see. It's part of the budget. Whether it gets spent or not will kind of depend on the people of Villa Park also in terms of their requests and so on and so forth. If it doesn't get spent, it's sitting there for us. It's not like spent automatically. It's based on requests and removal of trees and replacement of trees and so on and so forth. It's not based on anything else. So I'm in favor of leaving it in for this year as part of the budget. And then considering then if we actually spend it, what we actually do within the next year, what we keep that as or remove in the next fiscal budget based on our information.
Okay. Manager Harlan?
I just wanted to add, first of all, I appreciate your comments, all the comments, including yours, Trustee Cordova. We do have certain responsibility to continue to plant trees to keep up with our commitment as a tree city and keep a good canopy, which has many benefits for the community. And I don't think, I'll check for sure, but tree planting is not one of the topics. So I don't know if it's fair to put that in there, because I don't think asking for a tree planting is one of the topics in GoGov. So
I don't believe it is, but we'll look at it. Like
we do get some, but not nearly as many as tree removal. We get more calls about something's fallen because a tree not being planted isn't usually a hazard. A limb loose in a tree is a hazard. So obviously we get more of those calls. So just want to point that out.
Trustee Alfano?
Thank you. Dr. Guerrero, while you're there, do you know how many times the tree trimming calls would end up becoming a tree removal? Roughly? Does that happen often?
I would say at the current moment, it does not happen often because we usually get the request for tree removal versus tree trimming.
Okay.
To be honest with you,
Yeah.
a lot of them do request to evaluate the trees. It's usually a limb has fallen and maybe has caused some damage to a parked car, those sort of things, and so they have concerns. Typically, our policy currently stands is if it's semi-healthy, that it still branches, it still leaves, we try to keep it in place. But if there's signs of hollowness, splits in the tree, a lot of times the storms have split the stems, split the trunk, those have come down. So it's not often. If it does occur, typically they're not on our immediate list to remove. They're on our list to watch and remove in future dates, just because we do have a large backlog of, I think we're around 13,000 is what we estimated for parkway trees. And you can imagine, they're living plants, and so we do have some that die. And
Sure.
so there's a few. I wouldn't say the majority of the trimmings are usually still pretty clear. We do have requests. Maybe I'd say 10% of the trims come into would need to remove that tree in the near future.
Okay. And then adding another person on staff would obviously help kind of catch up with that backlog?
I wouldn't say catch up. I would say stop the bleeding a little bit, stabilize. Currently, we have a crew of 8 in our street and forestry department, but that covers all of streets and forestry. And so, that's covering potholes, that's covering storm sewers, that's covering street sweeping, that covers all that. What this will allow us to do is help cover crews with time off.
Okay.
I would say during the summertime, I don't think we're fully staffed any given week with vacation time that's allowed, personal time. And what that does is allow us another staff member to be able to maintain a full crew to go out. And so we're not short too many people where we can't now establish a crew that's safely to trim. We usually need at least 3, preferably 4 people to do trimmings and removals so that someone's watching the crew. We have a guy up in our aero bucket trimming and cutting it down, limiting, and guys on the ground and clean up. Our guys do a great job. We do get a lot of compliments when they remove trees and stuff about cleaning up and keeping the site fairly clean after they remove a tree for the residents.
Yeah. Thank you.
Trustee Kumar?
And this person would be hired, not just based on tree trimming, but is a flexible hire, I assume, anyway, correct?
The intent would be to help for the forestry with this position. But yes, based on our ASME, we can't just write in. It has to meet the ASME job descriptions, but it would be in the streets and forestry, which manages.
Which, I mean, I'm just saying, if it turns out that this is not a concern for one given year, this person has a lot of other things they could be doing for us as a village. I'm just pointing out the multiple and the flexibility of this position also.
Correct. But yeah, I would say on average, we do send out our forestry crew at least 3 to 4 days, if not all 5, depending on availability of crew.
Okay.
If there was an all hands on deck for patching streets, we'd work, they'd be cross-trained at least and to be able to be competent in street patching.
Which would, I'm just adding to the flexibility that we need in this village, though. That's, this person, though, is going to mainly be, I mean, 90% of the time cutting trees, they will be able to do other things and fill in holes in some other places as well, is my point.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
We don't have a large enough staff to have dedicated, just you do one job, they do multiple, but the intent would be to fill through the pool of guys, forestry crew out almost all days.
Trustee Cordova.
So this is more of a headcount increase request from trustee Patrick, because this person cannot be dedicated just to trees. It would just be an additional person for your team.
Correct, just
Yeah.
because of our ASME contract and the language presented, but yes, we can't just dedicate him for one job, but the intent would be to fill the crews through that pool.
It's going into corporate. Okay. Trustee Patrick.
So, Director Guerrero, I appreciate you clarifying that the intent of this position would be. And it's always better to get more out of this than you need. So, in the military, we always had a saying, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Listen, if we're going to hire a public works person here with the dedication of doing the trees, but if something happens on our streets, we've got that person that could attend to that. I really do appreciate that. But outside of the discussion of the trees and everything, I just want to touch back about what I said earlier regarding staff. In those discussions that I had with them are very valuable in not only helping me understand portions of the budget better, but understanding where we could, where some of our challenges are and where some of our opportunities are. And moving forward with those discussions, I'm very optimistic. I'm very happy about what I've been told and what is a part of that. For example, we've already talked about the BSNA software. This is a software that is going to help make some things expedited. It's going to make things a little bit easier for us as a board to understand portions of these budgets and where they come from. So that's an exciting element that's going to be implemented in January next year. Another thing is that I know that Director Howard, that this has not been the easiest year. We've had a lot of staffing challenges as well, which puts a lot on your shoulders. And with that being said, I know that we are looking at budgeting for future positions to help us alleviate some of that stress on you, which is good. And then we're also talking about potential policies moving forward that the board can put into play here to help us all understand our roles better and keep our village on track to make sure that we are spending wisely and doing the budgeting process effectively. So I appreciate those conversations, and to my point earlier, discussion like this helps us understand things. Like, for example, when we talk about how many tree requests have been used on the app, but we don't have that feature. Well, maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe you could simply add that to the app. And I don't know the logistics of making something like that happen, but these conversations lead to results. That's why it's so important that we have these. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a motion to amend this year's budget by increasing the corporate fund from $32,208,382 to a total of $32,326,882. and increasing the street improvement budget from $11,392,362 to $11,460,462, which would hire one public works laborer and allow $100,000 for contractual tree planting. Hey, Clerk Kornecki.
Okay, trustee.
Excuse me, and this is based on the budget, or the ordinance that was passed allowing the full levy this year.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, trustee Kumar,
Yes.
trustee Cordova,
Yes.
trustee Alfano,
Yes.
trustee Kozar.
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
And President Casone.
Yes. Okay. So now, do we have a motion for the ordinance accepting the amended 2025 budget?
So we already have that motion on the
Oh, okay.
table. So now it would be consideration of the ordinance, the budget ordinance as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
Thank you.
That's already
That's
on
That's
it.
okay, yeah,
Yes,
okay.
it has
All right,
been
has been-
amended. The motion to consider the ordinance was seconded. It has now been officially amended. So
Okay.
now it's any further discussion on the ordinance as amended.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay. Clerk Kornecki.
Okay, trustee Alfano,
Yes.
trustee Patrick,
Yes.
trustee Alfano, excuse me, Corkery's gone. Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Okay, so that passes. Okay, now we move on to item 13A, is a resolution of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, authorizing the purchase of a 2025 Ford F-550 4x2 Horton ambulance and authorizing the disposal of ambulance Medic 80, the total amount of $358,803. Manager Harline.
This resolution authorizes the village manager to execute a purchase order and all other necessary documents to purchase a 2025 Ford F-550 4x2 Horton Model 623 ambulance from Foster Coach Sales Incorporated. The purchase will be made through the Suburban Purchasing Cooperative Agreement. Staff recommends approval of the resolution to authorize the purchase of the ambulance from Foster Coach Sales, Inc., described above, for the amount not to exceed $373,803. And Fire Chief Stapleton is here and has prepared a fairly lengthy report. If you have any questions, this ambulance will actually be paid for, if we're lucky, in the 2026 budget.
Trustee Patrick.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, we have a second?
Second.
Trustee Trustee Kozar. Okay. Go ahead, Chief.
All right, just for the record, we try to buy an ambulance every 3 years. We keep it frontline 6, reserve 3, and it goes out. This was one that, I know the last year we rechassied the one, and that's the one we got rid of a little bit sooner. This is the one we're gonna get rid of a little bit later. It's 2 to 2.5 year lead time, and depending on how many other municipalities pass budgets at this time and get in the queue, they said it could possibly be up to 3 years. So I'm hoping December 26. To build an ambulance only takes about 3 months, so this is all the lead time preparation up to it. So with that, in case there's any questions, I come before you tonight to ask that this time around, we buy a brand-new ambulance. And the biggest reason is because of the structure of the box. Specifically, the patient compartment access, the door is actually moved all the way forward. I don't know if anyone's been in one of our ambulances, but the current style that we have on the new re-chassis and our reserve Medic 80 is, once you open the door, you're looking basically adjacent to the patient. This moves the door forward, which allows us to put a command cabinet, a task cabinet, that we can actually have someone stand behind the patient and organize all of the procedures going on, access the IV, instead of reaching over the patient, going through all their drawers. It just makes it more cohesive environment in the back of the ambulance.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kumar.
I think time is very essential in the health of patients. The ambulance journey is important to keep our patients alive more than anything in the village and whoever we help. You guys have been out there for my family members at times, and I know you're out there for a lot of other people. And that time is a life saved. So I'm absolutely in favor of any expenditure for an ambulance that will make that time even a little smidgen shorter, because that's a life.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Cordova?
You brought up a really good point where other municipalities are probably have already finished their budget within the last month or so. We're pretty late, and we pushed this a couple times. I think that may be a lesson for us to kind of figure out if there is a mechanism in place to find out when a municipality has passed their budget and how quick they're making an order, and how many months or years it could tack on to our delivery of what we're looking for with our delayed budgets. So maybe we could think about that when we look at budgets next year and saying, hey, the quicker the better, because then we get further up in line. Because if we're one of the last ones to pass, it's the 16th of December. If we're one of the last ones to pass a budget, and then we're going to go and pick up a what looks like a really cool ambulance, we want to get as close to the front of the line there. So just something for us to keep in mind as we move forward and looking at budgets. And we got to get a little scrappy with our timing to get a little bit ahead of time, because like you said, if it could take 2 years, or if we're at the end of the line, it could take 3, depending on what that market demands.
Correct.
So,
Right,
but
thank
thank you.
I would like to bring up that this one and the next resolution are, it looks like it's a no bid contract, but actually these are bid through, the ambulances through Suburban Purchasing Cooperative, who actually does the bidding on behalf of other municipalities. So this is a bid contract. It's just outsourced to a different company that actually takes in all the bids on these. So.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Sorry. So if we're going through this co-op, do we know if they kind of they can forecast how many they go and how many they're going to need, and then they'll ask for it, and then they get peeled back if they need to, or is it first come first served for that? Because I'm assuming they're going to want to have as many orders to go and get the best price, right?
So I included in my packet the entire Suburban Purchasing. You can buy anything from salt to plow trucks to an ambulance. So Foster Coach won the contract for the ambulance. So it's open for a certain price until May of 2025. If they extend it, they usually extend it a year at a time. All that is just secures the price for, you don't have to go out for bid for an ambulance.
Got it.
There's not many ambulance manufacturers in the country. We're lucky enough to, all our other ambulances are Foster Coach, and knock on wood, we've had a pretty good record with them. But there is no, if it goes, shorter in the queue or not, it all depends. It's an unlimited amount of ambulances. And this is not a supply chain issue, it's a labor issue. There's not enough people in Ohio at the factory to build these ambulances. That's why it's such a long lead time.
Trustee Kumar?
And I think the process actually locks in the price, is what you're saying. So that's a big thing with our inflation and stuff. We're locking in the price, but paying for it by 2026. That's actually good for us. That's an option there. Because I'm assuming, like anything else, everything is going up in price.
I'm sure, yes.
And so for us, that's actually a good thing that we're going through that in terms of our pricing overall, to go through that, because they've already locked the price in where we're sitting there.
That's correct.
And everything is done. All planning, engineering, all we need is the permission to go ahead and place the order, and then we can get in the queue.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Kirk Karnacki, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
President Casone?
Yes. Okay, item 13B is a resolution of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, approving the purchase of a 2026 Western Star 47X single-axle plow truck through the Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Program in an amount not to exceed $275,244. Manager Harline.
This resolution authorizes the village manager to execute a purchase order and all other necessary documents to purchase a new 2026 Western Star 47X single-axle plow truck from Linkdo Equipment Sales, and utilizing the Sourcewell competitive bid in the amount of $275,244. This authorization will allow the village to submit a purchase order to begin the construction of the truck and be able to receive the truck prior to the 2026-2027 winter season, and authorization of the expenditure in the 2026 budget. Additionally, by placing an order before the end of the year, the village will save on the annual price increase. It's been about 10% in the last several years, and allow for construction before new emission regulations are set to begin. This equates to a savings of about $50,000. The proposal will be able to enable the village to space the age of its fleet by allowing for the continual update of its equipment matching other trucks in the fleet, thus providing safe, reliable vehicles for its employees. Staff recommends approval.
All right, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the resolution? Trustee Kumar? We have a second? Trustee Cordova? Questions or comments? Trustee Cordova?
If we do get this in, when it says we'll receive it prior to, is that going to be very late? Like, we'll be able to use it by next winter?
Not next winter, it'd be the following winter.
The other one,
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
okay. I got it wrong.
They anticipate about similar to the analysis, but not as bad, but it's about 18 months by the time you place the order to about the time you get it. So we were hopeful to get in the fall of 2026, be ready for the 26, 27 winter. So that makes sense. Cool.
Unless it snows in August.
Unless it snows in August, then
We're in trouble.
maybe it'll come by August. The last one, I think they quoted us about April, and we got it in November. So
Well, there you go. Good. Trustee Alfano?
I do have a question about the co-ops. Does it cost anything as the municipality to join the co-ops? Is that something that you get with the?
I believe there's like a $5,000 a year fee for one of them. Some of them, there are some. I don't think Sourcewell has an annual fee, as far as I
I have to
remember.
verify that. You do have to be a member. I don't know if there's a cost associated
Okay.
with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
But one of the reasons why these are sequenced this way is that we have now adopted the budget with the future capital expenses. So we now promise that, we now have something documented that we are going to buy this, so we have so that was part of our authorization that the board gave us last year. So this is good to move forward and get these things done, but it is part of, I mean, it is in a budget. So we are purchasing on our capital improvement budget. So.
Any other questions? Clerk Konecki, please.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
President Kazel?
Yes. Okay, item 13C is a resolution approving and authorizing the proposal of SB Freeman Development Advisors LLC regarding the performance of a feasibility study related to the Union project in the village of Villa Park. Manager Harline.
This resolution approves an agreement with SB Freeman LLC to conduct a feasibility study related to the St. Charles Corridor Tax Incremental Financing District. The village seeks SB Freeman's assistance in the analysis and evaluation of development pro formas, forecasting properties and sales tax revenues, and economic incentive negotiation to support the related to the proposed development in the TIF. Specifically, this analyzes the need for the village to contribute general obligation bonds for the Union mixed-use apartment project. Professional fees for services are based on time required at set billing rates in the amount not to exceed $39,785 without prior authorization. Staff recommends approval of this resolution. That we have spent into this money actually a little bit. This was work with SB Freeman. They got a little bit ahead, but we are not more than $25,000. This is the total amount that will be needed to finish off the project. It is absolutely necessary to have this analysis to legally move forward with the project, and request the approval of the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the resolution? Trustee Kumar, do we have a second? Trustee Patrick, any questions or comments? Trustee Kozar.
Does this get paid from, ultimately from the TIF? I recognize it's a new TIF and there's no money in it, but is this a TIF eligible expense?
I don't, I'm looking, Mark says yes.
Yes.
Yes, it is a TIF eligible expense, yes.
So it's something that we can pay for now and then be reimbursed from the TIF?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. we
Okay.
can- If it's TIF eligible, we can do it. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Hey, Trustee Kumar.
That was kind of my question, so I'm happy, and I hope that we get.
Yeah, and by the way, constant communication with Marquette. I know that you guys we don't share everything with you. You'd be, very
Overwhelmed.
overwhelmed. But we talk with them. I talked with David Lyon on a weekly basis. We just talked with him and ComEd the other day about moving the power line. They're very, they're very close, or actually have their financing secured. We hope to bring back the RDA early, maybe the 13th or the 27th of January for approval to move forward with this project.
Any other questions? Clerk Rennicki, please.
Okay, trustee Cordova,
Yes.
trustee Kumar,
Yes.
trustee Kozar,
Yes.
trustee Alfano.
Yes.
Trustee Patrick.
Yes.
President Casone.
Yes. Okay, item 13D is a resolution providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Villa Park, DuPage County, Illinois, at the consolidated election to be held on April 1st, 2025, a public question as to whether the village clerk shall be selected by appointment rather than election. Manager Harlan.
At the last meeting of the Village Board of Trustees, the Village Board directed that the village attorney review the mechanism available for consideration by the village electors at the upcoming consolidated election to be held April 1, 2025, as to whether the village clerk should be appointed rather than elected, and present the matter for discussion at the village board meeting. Due to time constraints imposed by the election code regarding the board's action on this issue, the matter is being presented for discussion as well as official consideration of a resolution in this regard tonight. Our calculation is that 79 days puts the deadline on, I believe it was January 12th. So by the January 13th, it would be too late. So there was no issue to try and rush this, or it was just, otherwise, the next discussion would have been too late, and it would have seemed, it could have seemed that we were trying to prevent the discussion from taking place in a meaningful way. So that's why it's on the agenda for tonight.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the resolution? Trustee Patrick?
I'll make that motion.
We have a second.
I got you.
Trustee Cordova?
Yep.
Before we begin discussion, I know Mr. Laupkin had come up here early and had spoken about it. I have not reviewed the 1,400 towns in the village, or in the state of Illinois. I did check with the majority of the towns in DuPage County, 33 of them. And out of the 33, there are 5 that are appointed. The other 28 are elected. The town of Wadsworth in March 2024 passed a referendum changing from elected clerk to a appointed clerk. 5 other DuPage towns in the past couple of years have voted to change theirs to a appointed clerk, but all 5 of those have failed in the past. So I think based on that, I'm okay with leaving it as an elected position and voting no on this. Trustee Kumar.
As far as elected versus appointed, what if nobody runs for this office? I want to ask legal counsel on what is the procedure if there's no one running for the office?
Then the office would be considered vacant and subject to appointment for a 2-year period until the next election by the mayor with the consent of the board.
So I am not in favor of putting this question on the ballot. I feel that being elected says something. I want the people of Villa Park to elect whatever their officials are. including the board members and also the clerk. I think that states the will of the people. And I am not in favor of removing anything that will take away from the will of the people. In the interim, if nobody is running or there's some issue, then we have a process by which the person is put into office, is appointed, so there is no vacancy that we need to worry about. And so I feel that we just leave things as are and as is at this point, with regards to this particular process.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Patrick?
Thank you. Trustee Kumar, I completely understand where you're coming from with that. While I also agree that we want to make sure that our residents have the opportunity for a choice, we do have a resident here, and it's not the first time that I've heard this discussion either about this. So what I guess I'm asking is, why can't we leave it to the people to decide who should be appointed rather than elected, rather than us as a board right now not allow them that opportunity on the ballot? I believe Rolf does have some good points, and I understand that. And I believe that there might be other residents, well, I know that there are, based on the conversations that I had. At the end of the day, this is for the people. I think it's perfectly all right to put this as on the ballot and let the people choose.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Cordova?
I agree with Trustee Deepa here, where, giving the opportunity for people to vote for someone to get in also gives everyone the opportunity to pick what happens here, right? The consolidated elections have predominantly been a very low turnout. So a very small percentage of people, or a much smaller percentage of people that are going to vote in this upcoming April election. I don't think that represents the whole of our municipality. But giving them the option either way, I just don't know if, having 1,200 or 2,200 people vote in April to never allow a vote on this again is quite the right thing to do here. And I don't know who it was that came up and said there's a little bit of suppression here on the vote and the option for people to pick who sits there. So yeah, I would vote to leave this off the ballot and leave it off as a referendum, but leave it on the ballot for people to make that choice.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kozar?
I don't really know what the last part of that meant. Take it off the ballot, but leave it on the ballot?
Take it off a referendum, take it off as a referendum piece, right? Would it be a referendum to remove it as a?
To change it, it would be a referendum.
Okay, so
That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
That's what I meant, so.
So you're basically against putting a referendum on?
Right.
Okay.
So could this be a staff position and the president nominates or appoints a staff member to be able to do it? Like, for example, Cheryl Wagner does the clerk duty of Coffee with the Board, and she takes notes, does a fine job with it. Comes in, does the role of the clerk, and then publishes her notes or her minutes of that meeting. Is this also something that could be done, as the clerk position?
Right now, no. The village clerk is an elected position. The village clerk, as an elected clerk, does have the authority to appoint a deputy clerk to perform those duties of the
No, I mean
village clerk.
if there's a referendum.
But if the referendum was authorized, it would be subject to the appointing authority as submitted on the question that's proposed to the electors. So,
So as it reads, So if the referendum were to pass and the president was allowed to nominate or appoint somebody, and then we turned to our village staff and said, we would like to have somebody that's on payroll, essentially, take care of those clerk duties, would that be a possibility?
My reading of it is that no, because the Illinois Constitution is the authority for the board to be able to even submit this question to the electors. And the Illinois Constitution specifically says for non-home rule municipalities that they're only given the powers granted to them by law, but also the powers to provide by referendum for their officers and the manner of selection and the terms of office. So that's not an employee, that is an office. So the individual that would have to be, appointed would have to be an officer and could not be a staff member. That's an employment position as opposed to an officer of the municipality.
So there'd be no mechanism to get essentially a professional clerk who can be appointed and then ultimately unappointed if they're not doing their position correctly or
Well, any
shirking their duties.
Okay, so any appointed position can be removed by the appointing authority. So when a position is appointed, it is subject to removal.
Okay. And right, so that's just across the board. Anybody appointed can be unappointed. But I guess I don't understand why if anybody can be appointed, why it couldn't be a staff member.
Because a staff member is an employee, and an employee is a position of the municipality, not an office of the municipality. And the Illinois Constitution only allows the village board by referendum to provide the manner of selection of their officers.
And you can't have a dual role. So, like, for example, if somebody lived in Villa Park and also worked in Villa Park, for Villa Park, they would be ineligible to run as a trustee.
They wouldn't.
Because they'd be an employee and they'd be a trustee at the same time.
Well, that's a separate question about whether they could run for a political office, but whether they could be appointed to the position, it would be a separate office that they would be holding. So it would be an analysis as to whether that individual could hold an employment position and then separately hold the office, and whether there would be conflicts that were applicable to holding of that office. So it would depend.
I'm in favor of the referendum, and I'm in favor of at least having the people decide and the people choose whether or not they want the clerk to be a elected or an appointed position.
Trustee Kumar.
As far as a person, whether someone already in the office, I'm not disagreeing. That it would be nice for management to choose someone to sit in this position, so on and so forth. But that would entail a cost, I assume. And is that cost going to be less than what we're paying for our clerk right now? Absolutely not. I'm 100% sure. So there is a cost entailed if anybody, you cannot expect anybody on staff to do things for free. It's not happening. It's going to cost us. And that also is a concern. There will be a cost. I don't think we can take staff time, which is already stretched as it is, to do a clerk position unless they're duly and correctly compensated for said position. And that would cost money. And hearing what Melissa has to say, that's not even a possibility, but it also would cost a lot if it was. So there's two sides, and that's part of the reason I'm not in favor of it. It is okay we have a mechanism to appoint someone. It is okay, I think, to have an elected official. The people will speak, whether it's an elected official or not. It depends on who runs. If you want a candidate, run that candidate to be the clerk. That person will win, and then we will have that candidate. That's how I think about it. I think it's okay either way.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Trustee Kozar.
So if an employee can't be the clerk, I mean, how is it, and I think Cheryl Wagner does a great job with coffee at the board. How is it that she does the clerk duties with coffee with the board? She's not like deputized, she isn't a clerk, yet she does the clerk duties. So explain to me how that works. And I'm not suggesting she shouldn't do it, but it seems contrary to the explanation I just received.
She's just taking minutes, right?
I mean, you know, my understanding is that's just the practices, how coffee with the board have been handled. And the village clerk is required to attend the official meetings of the village board as regular and special meetings, as well as the committee of the whole meetings of the village board. Coffee with the board has been practically handled in a different manner, and it sounds like Cheryl Wagner attends those to just take minutes or notes of the meeting.
It's an official meeting, though. We have a agenda for it.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
and it
go
should
ahead.
be- and
Mr.
it's the same as,
Mr. President, can I just ask
oh,
you to ask the peanut gallery in the back to stop their comments and heckling?
I'm sorry. Quiet, please come on, please come. All right. For planning and zoning, we have a employee of Villa Park that takes minutes now, instead of having a court reporter here. So as a, it's a commission, it's outside of the clerk's duties. The clerk does not take, the clerk only takes minutes of the board meeting. Coffee with the board is a kind of a casual thing that Villa Park does. Not many towns do that. So as far as Cheryl doing that, I mean, that's kind of a, something that the manager requested her to do, and she was accepting that. So it's not a clerk, the clerk's position does not entail taking minutes outside of the board meeting.
Right, and the reason why there's an agenda, it's my understanding, I don't believe there are any topics that are itemized on the agenda for a specific discussion or for action. So no action is ever taken at a coffee with the board meeting. And the reason why an agenda is posted is because the gathering implicates the Open Meetings Act. And there's a requirement per the Open Meetings Act that there is notice and agenda posted for any gathering of a majority of a quorum of the members of the board. So although there is an agenda posted, that's a compliance issue with respect to the Open Meetings Act, and those coffee with the board meetings have been more informal discussions and an opportunity for the board to meet with the residents and still have discussions regarding public business.
Yeah, I just want to ensure that I understand this and that this is just kind of part of this. So of the 30, there's 33 total municipalities around here. These are all surrounding. If you want, I can kind of rattle them off. I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't know if there's all, I don't know if that's all of the
It seems
towns,
like,
but it's.
I wouldn't be able to
page
name any
counting, yeah.
more that are missing.
Yeah.
But then there's 5 of them that have, they're appointed by mayor with consent of board. But the difference here is that those are all home rule. So like Aurora, Downers Grove, Hinsdale, Naperville.
Hinsdale is not home,
Oh,
that's the only one,
okay.
yeah,
Oh,
correct.
4
There's
of the 5.
4 out of the 5,
Four of the
correct.
5 are
Are home
home
rule.
rule. So Aurora's home rule, Downers Grove is home rule, not Hinsdale, Naperville, Wheaton. So some of the largest of towns around us also keep it as elected. So, okay, that's just the data.
Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. First of all, what we talked about earlier today about discussion and why it's important, here we are having good discussion and discussing this. Now, what Trustee Kozar proposed was an idea. This isn't what the referendum or what is on here that we're talking about. We're discussing this, ideas, and that's how things happen. Trustee Kumar, when we talk about voter suppression, though, essentially we're doing the same thing. We have a resident here who is a voter, and I've had conversations with other residents regarding topics like this. They want this on a referendum so that way the people can vote on this. I don't understand what the harm is on putting this on there and letting the people choose. And one of the things that I also want to say is that we have become victim of, and we do this constantly, of the way things have always been done. Here is a resident that is coming, proposing a new option, and we always compare to our surrounding communities. But do we ever go outside of that and look what's working outside of our state, nationally, even globally, on how things and processes work? The way things have always been done is something that we need to get away from, okay? But this is an opportunity that has no detrimental effect to what we are doing right now. We are allowing the people to decide this. And if they decide yes, it is so. If they decide no, it remains the same. So ultimately, I believe that by removing this or not adding this as a referendum question to the ballot, we are essentially, yes, affecting voter suppression. I have no personal interest in how this goes. I am here for discussion, but also for the residents that show up for this. Now, we might not necessarily agree eye to eye on some of these things, but here we are discussing this, but then also allowing people to speak their minds. And if we have people that are asking, multiple people asking to let the people vote, let the people vote.
Okay. Anyone else? Trustee Kumar.
I'm not against people voting on a particular, agenda item or putting it on the ballot, so on and so forth. I think this is a rushed attempt to do that. I would rather wait to do that and kind of get more information. That's one thing. I am always against taking people off an electoral position. Election is a really good mechanism of action. And this is pulling away from election in the future. And I do not prefer to dismantle the election system. I'm very proud of our election system, and allowing the people to speak, even if it's not, the populace speak at times. It is our electoral system. I'm very proud of it. And so that's kind of why I do not like to take things out of an elected position in general. I wouldn't want the president suddenly to be appointed of the United States. I would not want our congressman to be appointed. So that is where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a national standpoint, maybe. Maybe that's not valid in our city standpoint, but that's it. But if we want to put it on the ballot, let's really carefully think of what we want to put on the ballot and not rush to this appointment per se. And that's the problem I have with it. It's got to be put on within 12 days, and I think that's a rushed way of doing things. I agree with you. We have to have this discussion, Kevin. We need to put something on the ballot. I'm not even against the fact that maybe the city of Villa Park wants to have this position appointed in the future. But how are we going to put it on the ballot? We've just heard that it's not an appointment that can be a village employee necessarily. We have to find someone to appoint. And do we leave it to the people at that point, or do we have a single person appointing? This is the question we come to. So, and as boards change and people change, my fear of this is the appointment may not be as favorable in the future as it is right now, right? So initially, yes, it may be great. You don't have that same longevity that you do, or the security in an elected position, which is always amenable to change. Any elected individual can be changed at any point. That is the way of the people. And I think you're taking that ability away once you allow appointment. That's my problem with it.
Trustee Alfano.
Thank you. I wanted to sit back and listen to what everybody else had to say, kind of formulate my ideas and my thoughts on this. And I hear the way that things have always been done, and that I feel is kind of like the nail in the coffin to any good ideas, any progress. And I think that Villa Park, from the way that I see it, as someone who didn't grow up here, I wasn't raised here, but I did choose to raise my family here. I want to see it change, and I think that that's kind of where the stagnant part is we're kind of stuck in this cycle of, but we always want it to be the way that it's always been done. So I hear that, and I hear the voter suppression argument, and I hear it on both sides. I think that it does need to, this question should go to the people. I think that for me to make that decision alone here on the board with the rest of you isn't necessarily the right way to do that. But I also hear the rushed argument. And I think that that's where I stand at the moment is I think this is a discussion that we need to have. And I think that we do need to look at the way things have always been done here, and we may need to look at how we change it. I do feel, however, as somebody who likes to plan, I do really feel like this is a rushed decision, and I feel like maybe this is not the right time to have this decision to put on the ballot in such a short amount of time. I am in favor of going back and having this discussion in the future, but I don't know that this is the right moment to have this discussion at this moment in time.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Clerk Renecki, please.
Okay, trustee Cordova?
So let me just clarify. A yes is,
Yes, we'll put this on the resolution on April 1st. A no would,
say, so I'm a no.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Alfano?
No.
Okay, trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
No.
Trustee Kosar?
Yes.
President Kazone?
I vote no. Okay, so that will not be on. But again, this can be brought up in the future. It would be another 2 years, though, before that would come up. So-
I would suggest that we have a cow on this particular topic to have this discussion. I think it needs to be openly discussed. I have no problems with it. I just would like to vet out all the consequences before I make
Yeah.
this decision.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't disagree with that. I would just recommend that that be put off for a long time because it would not be on for another 2 years. It would not be able to be up for referendum.
No, but it can, when the new board comes, I would
Yeah.
really contemplate that being one of our cow topics as we move into a new board.
Okay. Okay, item 13E is a resolution of the Village of Villa Park approving and authorizing the execution of a release and settlement agreement, the Wawack litigation. Manager Harline.
This resolution authorizes the village village president to execute a settlement agreement with Richard and Mary Wawack and Aetna OL LLC, and further authorizes payment of $135,000 in direct payment within 15 days and purchase of the Wawack home according to the conditions in the real estate purchase agreement attached below. This completes a lengthy legal process that involved the village filing suit to extinguish covenants written in 1928, and the Wawax County are suing for injunctive and other relief. Staff and legal counsel recommend approving the resolution. A signed version by the Wawax is attached as of today, and the staff definitely recommends approving the resolution, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the resolution? Trustee Patrick?
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Trustee Kumar?
I'll make-
Questions or comments? Trustee Kumar?
I just want to mention, this is a very long process and a long thing that has taken a lot of work by staff to address and a lot of discussion by the board to address as well. And we have addressed it in, I believe, the best manner possible for Villa Park, given the longevity of this particular situation. I'm rather proud of our board with respect to this and our staff in coming finally to a conclusion on this very long, arduous process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Okay, so now Clerk Renecki, please.
Okay, trustee Alfano?
Yes.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
President Kazone?
Yes. Okay, item 13F is a resolution approving a side letter agreement between the Village of Villa Park and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, AFL-CIO Local 964. Andrew Harlan.
The proposed resolution authorizes the side letter agreement between the village and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 31, AFL-CIO, Local 964, also known as AFSCME. This agreement updates the collective bargaining agreement between Village and AFSCME as it relates to classifications, duties, and compensation, amending classification titles, and provides additional compensation for certain licenses and certification. The changes would be effective January 1, 2025. The resolution authorizes the village manager to execute the side letter on behalf of the village and substantially the form provided herein with additional review by the village attorney. I think we have the final version in here. We definitely urge approval of this. If we have this approved tonight, we can get it signed before the end of the year. Since the changes become effective January 1st, 2025, it would be much easier for payroll to have it all done ahead of time. This is about a 2-year process, and Suzanne McVeigh and Michael Guerra and others have put in a tremendous amount of time and really tried to sit down and listen to the things that would make the members of AFSCME, which involves members in the Public Works, Parks and Recreation, police departments, and then of course in finance and I don't really know. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Community economic development. Sorry, Mark. No, there's no one in fire, right? Nobody in fire, but about every other department in the office, in field staff, and it was a tough undertaking, and I don't want to talk too long, but because we have a variety of different positions. And the goal here was to put some incentives to improve for those employees who would do things that would make them more well-trained, more valuable employees, and also help them grow within their position and give some incentives to do that, enhancing our the training and effectiveness of our staff, and also giving a sense of some of the things that we heard in employee surveys about chances for advancement, even when there are limited, numbers of management positions. So I think that this was not only did the department heads work hard on this, but the members of AFSCME put in a lot of hours, and Ken Pillar, the president and the executive board of AFSCME, should be applauded for their effort as well. So
Thank
that's
you.
about as long a speech as I'm planning to give the next
Thank you.
6 months.
Okay. We have a motion, trustee Patrick.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion.
We have a second, trustee Cordova. Okay, questions or comments? Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. Director Guerra, sorry to put you on the spot. I know you talked earlier about incentives in this contract and how they relate to an arborist in Villa Park. Can you explain that a little bit more in depth? I would like for everybody to understand part of this contract and how we are incentivizing for a arborist on staff.
Yes, thank you. In part of this reclassification, there was several discussions and topics about licensing and creating licensing and equivalent pay for that. So as part of the side letter, and Manager McVeigh can correct me, is additions for hourly pay increases for certain licensing. I believe that licensing is on the Public Works side for wastewater 3, Class C. Thank you. And then an arborist. The arborist is actually across the board, I think, for parks and Public Works, as seeing the need that the parks do have trees in the parks as well, and it's an incentive. So currently, as it sits, it would be for those licensings, if you acquire a Class, sorry, and I should mention Class A for trucks as well, you get a 50-cent per hour rate increase. And that's in addition to your rate, so whatever your rate is plus 50 cents. So it creates about $1,000 or a little bit more over the course of a year, pending over time, those sort of items. That was, I think, one of the discussion points that was brought on about AFSCME was we have a lot of people. Where's the encouragement to go get training, go get licensing that will help the village? We see that as an enhancement for the village to have trained and licensed professionals in a lot of these locations. So with this one, arborist was added, and I do think there's a certified playground and safety inspector that's added as well for our Parks Department, where if there's that certification, they get an additional 25 cents per hour. And that's where it comes in. I do believe, looking at it, the arborist is open to Public Works and Parks, as those are the two departments that would benefit from having an arborist. Does that answer your, I know I went
Yes.
a little bit over, but I want across all boards.
So just to clarify, is that this incentive in this contract should incentivize one of our employees to become a certified arborist for the Village of Villa Park?
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Obviously, we can't force anybody, but we certainly hope that this is an encouragement. It obviously shows another step, as the manager Harline explained, that there's now several steps in there. There's several different features that show the gumption, or I can't think of that right word right now, that they want to move up and advance in their career with the Villa Park and provide steps, and then also the financial benefit of acquiring some of those licensings. It shows us the motivation that these employees are looking to move up, and also giving them the fair compensation to do some of that.
Thank you.
Trustee Kumar.
I am very glad to see that we have these incentives built in. I think the incentives help people also feel more a part of their job. I think from an HR point of view, the incentives help as well as having an arborist has benefits in terms of choosing which trees, how quickly we remove them, what we can do for them. Apart from just cutting them down and addressing them, all of that will be addressed by this kind of skill. It gives one more skill on top in your team, and I'm very happy that we're having that procedure to have that skill become a part of our Villa Park team.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, Clerk Renecki, please.
Okay, trustee Kozar,
Yes.
trustee Alfano,
Yes.
trustee Cordova,
Yes.
trustee Kumar,
Yes.
trustee Patrick.
Yes.
President Kazoo.
Yes. Okay, item 14, unfinished business. I don't think we have any unfinished business. Okay, item 15, new business. Item A is postponing the committee of the whole meeting of January 13th, 2025 until January 27th, 2025 at 6 PM in Village Hall. And this is due to our grand opening at the rec center, which had to be moved from January 3rd. We were hoping to get our state rep and our state senator here, and they were not supposed to be in session, but it looks like they are going to be in a lame duck session on January 3rd. So we are moving the official opening to the, or not the opening, but the ribbon cutting to the 13th. So that is the reason for this. We will need a motion and a vote on this, so if someone would like to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Cordova, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Alfano? Okay, anyone want to discuss that?
No,
Okay.
well,
Go ahead.
just looking forward to that. I'm more than happy to be flexible so that the people that helped us can be there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Clerk Renecki, please.
Okay, trustee Alfano,
Yes.
trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
President Kazoo.
Yes. Okay, item 15B is an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a contract for the village's purchase of certain real property commonly known as 823 North Harvard Avenue, Villa Park, Illinois. Manager Harline.
This ordinance authorizes the village president to execute the real estate contract with the Wawak family to complete the agreement from item 13E in the agenda. We have to put, because it's an ordinance and we typically put resolutions after ordinances, that's why we have this in this unusual order. The resolution for the agreement this is subordinate to the agreement, so that's why it's on the agenda later.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for the ordinance? Trustee Kumar, do we have a second? Trustee Cordova. Okay, questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Clerk Renecki, please.
Okay, trustee Patrick.
Yes.
Trustee Alfano.
Yes.
Trustee Kumar.
Yes.
Trustee Cordova.
Yes.
Trustee Kozar.
Yes.
President Kazoo.
Yes. Okay, item 16 is our village commission reports. Acceptance of the minutes of the Traffic and Safety Commission meetings on August 6th, 2024, September 3rd, 2024, and October 1st, 2024. Acceptance of the minutes of the Environmental Concerns Commission Bike, Pedestrian, and Transit Meeting of October 24th, 2024. Acceptance of the minutes of the Environmental Concerns Commission October 24th, 2024 meeting, and acceptance of the minutes of the Fund Commission's October 22nd, 2024 meeting, and those are all in the packet tonight. Item 17, Village Clerk's Report. Clerk Konecki.
Just to clarify to the residents that although an effort was made to remove me from the ballot, I will be running for reelection. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Village Trustees Report. We'll start on our left. Trustee Alfano.
Thank you. My only comment this evening is I hope everybody has a restful holiday break, because I think it's well-deserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kumar.
Yeah, I want to kind of second that motion. Have a very happy Merry Christmas holiday break. Spend time with your family. Enjoy what you have. Get better if you have back pain like me. Whatever it is to get back and running come January. Have a happy time, Villa Park, and we hope to see all the colorful displays that you're putting out there and enjoy along with you.
Great, thank you. Trustee Patrick.
Thank you. I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody, and see you next year.
Okay. Trustee Cordova.
No matter how you celebrate here in Villa Park, we're grateful for the diverse and vibrant community that we have here. We have Christmas coming up, we have Kwanzaa, we have first day of Hanukkah, we have New Year, we have Boxing Day, we have a lot. So I just want to celebrate everyone in Villa Park and wish everyone a joyful time off if you get it. If not, then hopefully you can meet with family and just take a beat to reset for 2025. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Kozar.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thanks for all your good work and efforts in '24, and looking forward to a good '25.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have just a couple of things. Electronic recycling is this Saturday, the 21st, from 9 till noon on Home Avenue, right next to the Village Hall here. You do need a ID to show that you live in Villa Park. Manager Harline and I were able to meet with Representative Diane Blair Sherlock last Friday. We had a DuPage Managers and Mayors Conference meeting with her. Very successful with her. You know, she understands the needs of the municipalities, and she's on board with a lot of the things down in the state that the municipalities that she represents need. So it was a very good meeting. I met today with DuPage County Chair Deb Conroy, again at DMMC, and she is proposing a focus group helping homeless people in DuPage County, especially those that are like living in hotels, to try to get them permanent housing, either through funding or donations or getting places built. So there will be further information on this. She's trying to get a focus group with pretty much anyone that would be interested in it, managers, mayors, and residents probably of DuPage County. So there'll be more information on that later. And just like to wish everyone Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. You know, like Trustee Cordova said, however you celebrate it, or if you don't celebrate it, just enjoy the next couple of weeks. It is the best time of the year. Okay, Village Manager's Report.
First, with the efforts of Riley Pillar and the Parks and Rec Department, including Greg Gola, the director, and Suzanne McVeigh, our assistant village manager, we have launched a new Parks and Rec website to also help us advertise our new recreation center. So if you haven't checked it out, it launched last week, and I've heard some good stuff. I have not actually visited it, I confess. But I hear received many compliments. The village is closed on Christmas Eve and New Year's Day, and it is possible the village manager might look to let staff go home a little early on New Year's Eve, unless I hear complaints from because anonymous. You don't have to do it tonight, but but a little early on New Year's Eve. And I just appreciate the work that everyone has put in this year. It's been a very busy and a very successful year, and I mean a lot of the fruits will be born next year when the recreation center opens. When we start seeing, we're already seeing construction on Central Avenue. We're going to start seeing construction at the Union later this year. But I just really enjoyed, glad we got the budget done. I will say, and this is just, it's going to be a little tighter getting the budget document done by December 13th with the changes of the last minute, but we'll do everything we can to get it to you the 13th, and it'll be the 27th at the latest. That doesn't mean that the late discussion wasn't valid and useful, and I appreciate Trustee Patrick coming forward with questions to give us time to have the answers ready for tonight's meeting. So next year, maybe we'll do on the first meeting in November, have like a cow-like discussion so we can get more of these ideas discussed earlier. That's something that I could do better next year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 21A is executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C21 regarding discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. And we have a motion for executive session. Trustee Kumar, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Cordova? Okay, questions, comments? Clerk Konecki, please.
Trustee Patrick?
Yes.
Trustee Kumar?
Yes.
Trustee Cordova?
Yes.
Trustee Alfano?
Yes.
Trustee Kozar?
Yes.
President Casone?
Yes. So we will go into executive session, and we will adjourn our regular meeting out of executive session. So we'll see everybody in 4 weeks, January 13th. Have a very blessed holiday and happy and safe New Year. Thank you.
Surgery.